Welcome to IQ HitList. I'm Vishwas Sadashivan. IQ HitList is Inconvenient Questions one-on-one interview that explores the views of an individual that you want to see. My guest today is a climber of peaks, and I mean that metaphorically and literally. He has done 7 summits in his 20s, and yes, that includes the big one. He is the first Singaporean to scale Mt Everest for charity, raising $40,000 for needy patients who don't quite qualify for government subsidies. He raised significant funds to support a Nepalese village he and his wife adopted later, providing books, computers, medical and other supplies. He gives motivational talks regularly to prison inmates. All this while making it as an orthopedic surgeon. Well, he's still training to be an orthopedic surgeon, and he fits the exotic description of tall, dark and handsome. You'll find out in a while. He's laughing at this point in time. And he's only 31. Happily married. He certainly can make the best amongst us feel quite unaccomplished. Yet the masochist in me says, I want to talk to this guy and I want you to meet him. Kumaran Rasappan is his name. Kumaran, welcome to HitList.
Hi.
You watch Everest?
Yeah, I did, yes.
Did you like it?
I loved it, but it wasn't such a good thing going with my wife.
Why?
She got to see what I experienced firsthand, Yeah, and she wasn't too happy of letting me go in the first place.
Which part of the movie really you think affected her?
I think she could relate to the fact that there was a husband and wife, and the wife was pregnant, and the wife expected him to come back, and he said he would, and he left, and he never did, while she was still pregnant.
Yeah.
I think that's what did it for her.
And you know what's interesting? I think it's a wife thing or something like that, or a mother thing, because when I went to watch the movie Everest with my wife and daughter, and my wife, when we came out, she was visibly upset, and she said, "What's wrong with the two of you?" Because both of us like all these outdoor activities, right? My daughter is 16. Then she told my daughter, "You're not going to go anywhere near any mountain," And I told my daughter quietly, "You'll go, don't worry." Perhaps not Everest, but my wife asked me a very interesting question, a question that in the movie, the journalist who subsequently wrote the book asked the mountaineers in base camp, right? He asked, "Why do you do it? Why do you do it?" My wife asked that question. Why do people do this? So what's your reason?
And you would also find that while the interviewer asked the climbers this question, none of them had really very good replies.
Yes.
And even the guy who seemed to have a good reply was kind of figuring that out as he was talking itself. So this was an idea that was hatched in 2008, 4 years in the making before I actually climbed Everest. And it was after I actually climbed my first mountain, which was Mount...
You had finished medical school?
No, I was in medical school at that time. I was third year as a medical student. And after my first mountain, which was Mount Kilimanjaro, when I was climbing it, I told myself that I'm never going to do something so silly as that again.
Why?
Because my friends were using that precious 3 weeks of break, enjoying themselves in a beach, sipping a tequila and seeing the sunset. I was there in the cold, freezing away, and going to the top to see a rock and take a photo of the rock and come back as soon as possible. And this was dangerous, it was expensive, it was time consuming, and at the end of the day, what do I gather?
Yeah.
And as I was going up, I told myself I'm never going to do something as silly as this, because I was really tired. I was really, really tired. But when I was...
And you were not exactly the fittest person, right?
No, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was not fit.
You were not unfit.
Unfit,
but
yeah.
You were not anywhere close to the kind of fitness one would imagine a person would have to climb Everest or
That's
climb
right.
a big mountain.
At that time, that's right, yes.
So how did you manage that?
In fact, we underestimated the mountain tremendously, because we were relatively...
We meaning?
I went with a group of friends
from
NUS, yes, from NUS. I tried to get medical students, but I think they had too little time and many of them not interested.
Okay.
So I only could find like 2 friends from my batch, one from a junior batch, and some others from my hall and rock climbing, stuff like that. So it's a bunch of 6 of us, and we were relatively okay, not too unfit, not too fit. And we thought that with this fitness, we will be able to climb an easy peak. The statistics says it that about 30 to 50,000 people climb Kilimanjaro every year, and about 1/3 of them succeed. So I was thinking we are relatively okay and we can climb. And we had very little preparation.
So how many months of preparation did you have?
Months, maybe weeks.
Weeks? Wow. You guys are smart.
About 6 weeks.
I thought medical students are smart.
I thought we were. After I was there, I was like, oh man, we should have trained harder for this. Yeah.
So what was the most difficult thing to do when you climb a mountain?
I think being mentally prepared.
Okay.
You need to know that climbing for me at least is the hardest physical thing I have done, and all those people who have tried climbing say it is indeed the hardest physical thing they have done as well. So and while people understand it's physically demanding, they also fail to prepare themselves mentally and emotionally and spiritually before they actually go to the mountain.
Why spiritually?
For me, I think I was brought closest to God during this period of time where I was climbing mountains, where the uncertainty is so great, where you feel that nothing is actually in your hands, and no matter how much of preparation you take, how much you can expect something to happen, and how much you can hope for something to happen, if that one moment, the 5 minutes comes where the weather is not good, you just have to turn back, or even an avalanche might come and you might lose your life, and people beside you lose fingers, lose their life, and you are trying to do something that they have tried to do and they have failed, and you question yourself all the time.
Why you?
Why?
For better, for worse, why you?
Why me? And why am I doing this? And what's the purpose? What's the
so
reason?
You still haven't answered the question. So why?
Exactly like what they were doing in the movie itself.
You haven't answered the question. You went round.
So when I was climbing Kilimanjaro, I told myself never do this. But when I was back in Singapore, back to my studies, doing the daily mundane reading day in, day out, I was thinking that was probably one of the most satisfying things I've ever done in my life. And at the moment you're at the summit, you think that it'll be satisfying, you think you'll feel euphoria, but when you're there, you're just too tired to think about anything. And you just want to come back as soon as possible. Your guide is telling you better come back, it's unsafe to stay there and all these things. When you start coming down, then the reality sinks in that, I actually summited the highest mountain in Africa, and it was quite high, and I felt that I put in a lot of effort and I reaped the rewards, Like a lot of things in life, it's you might work hard at something and you might not get anything out of it. But in the mountains, you know that every step you take, one single step is one single step closer towards the goal. But again, with that is the uncertainty, which makes it a little bit more thrilling, I would feel. And all these thoughts started sinking in when I was back in Singapore.
Another person who scaled Mount Everest told me, Singaporean, told me that for him it was really the idea of doing something completely that challenges every aspect of you. As you said, mind, body, soul, spirit, challenges you to the nth, and for nothing. And it gives you a very powerful sense of your self-worth. That's what he said, And you said something quite interesting in one of your quotes. You said, you would think I would be used to the sight of a dead body, being a doctor, right? But when I saw the first of 4 frozen corpses on my way to the summit of Mt Everest in Nepal, it reminded me of my own mortality. Several climbers die every year and their bodies are just left there. At first, I thought the corpse was just resting, but after a few minutes, I realized he wasn't moving. I was shaken. Could you share with us this?
It's interesting. You brought me back 3.5 years ago to that moment. So that year was a tragic year where there was the weather window opened up quite late. So everyone was waiting to summit the mountain, try it on the same day. And there was
That's how many hours? The final climb, final summit?
It's to the summit and back will be, back to about Camp 2 will be about 20 odd hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
The final summit.
The final one. You will push off at about 8 p.m. that night, and you'll summit in the morning, 6 a.m. Then you'll come back down, and depending on how fast you are.
And you're given a window.
Because the weather clears
Yep.
up at that time. So there was only about 2 windows, or at most 3 windows, while during the spring season, where the winds die down to allow the climbers to climb. So everyone was very worried that the window might never come. So the first window that they got, 250 people tried summiting the mountain on the same day. And there was large human traffic jams formed, because there's only one way up and one way down. There's only one rope. So everyone was on the line, and they had to wait for the next guy to go forward before they could go forward. And when people had summited and they were coming down, they were using the same line to come down as well.
And it's a very narrow ridge.
At certain segments, it's actually very narrow.
As in the movie.
Yes.
Very narrow ridge.
Towards the summit,
Yep.
after the South Summit.
Yep.
Yeah, so people were asked to turn down because their oxygen tanks were empty, because climbers who had gotten outfitters which were not so reputable had logistically flawed, you see. So they had limited oxygen supply, limited Sherpa support, all these things. So people were asked to turn down, but the drive that got them doing this in the first place had them overwhelmed, and they just wanted to continue because they were so near. They couldn't be asked to turn down at such a last.
So they went up.
All of them submitted. All of them submitted. There was those 4 people who died. All of them submitted, and as they were coming down, they perished one by one.
They perished because of lack of oxygen.
Most of them have had oxygen which ran out.
So these were the people you saw. These were the corpses you saw.
Yeah.
As you were summiting.
As I was summiting, yes.
Wow.
At first, I thought they were resting, but the guy was still for too long, and then we realized, yes, this is the first guy. Then the second one came, a third one,
and you had just seen them before.
I knew they were there in base camp, but I had not seen them personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you feel at that point? You said you reminded me of my own mortality.
So you are trying to do something that they tried to do a week ago, and they have died, and you are carrying on. So your focus needs to be there.
How has that changed you as a doctor? How has that affected you as a doctor, as a volunteer, as a human being?
You realize that things can go wrong, and nothing is certain. It reinforced my belief that nothing is certain. It allowed me to take things much more calmly back when I was back in Singapore.
Even now?
Now somehow I need to get reminded of the mountains again. Life catches up. People need to remind themselves about this. They tend to forget. And you need to experience this kind of stuff to appreciate what you have, I feel. And our pace of life does not allow that at all.
Yeah. And so that has made you go back and go back to Nepal every year. You've been going back to Gorkha,
almost,
the city, the town of Gorkha. The village or town?
It's a district.
District,
but there are small settlements around.
What's your attachment to this place, Gorkha?
I first went to Nepal in 1999 when I was a secondary 3 student. Yeah, and that was my teacher. He was I'm very fond of him. He went to Nepal under the Singapore International Foundation with no pay leave to teach English in a village. And when he came back, he taught there for a year. When he came back to our school, he was telling why not we go back to this school to help out. And he formed a team of students and teachers, and we went back to the school the year later, and I was part of the team. So he was the first one to introduce me to the mountains, trekking in Annapurna Range, and the school to do community service and service in general, And it left a lasting impression, because at that time where you're most influenced during your teenage years, secondary school period, I'll still remember very clearly about every experience, every feeling that I had during that period of time. Many years later, during my Everest stint, when I had the opportunity to help out a school back in Nepal, I immediately thought of this school. Definitely I want to go back to this school. And that got it rolling, and now it's nearly a yearly affair. Even if I couldn't personally go down, I had given talks and inspired some groups of people who actually went down. Went down. That was like completely satisfying for me.
So, hearing what you're saying, Kumaran, it's very interesting, because the early days of our lives, obviously your secondary 3 experience shaped to a large extent who you are. Scouting, of course, is another
Definitely.
factor, since we are both from the
Both
same scout team. Yeah, we have to plug it a bit. But, you know, the experience that you have at a very early age in your life, right? Maybe 12, 13, 14, actually shapes your perspective of life. You know, your willingness to push the boundaries, your willingness to do something different, you know, and that's something you believe in. You give talks to schools, I'm sure, right? So, what is the strongest takeaway from all this in terms of not just mountaineering? Mountaineering is just one way of expressing yourself.
It's a concept.
Right?
It's a concept.
It's just one way of expressing yourself. You have combined mountaineering, nature, and charity and social work all in one. You know? But that has made you a better person, a better human being.
I
Right?
hope so.
Yeah. Can you imagine what kind of human being you would be
bad,
without that? Bad. Even with the good influence you're like this. Right? Okay. So the point here is, what is the message that you want to send? What is the inconvenient question that you want to ask all of us to think about? As Singaporeans, as teachers especially, as parents?
I think we need to draw a line between protecting our children, our future, and letting them be exposed to things that make them grow, allow them to grow. For instance, seeing the world, failure, doing things which are not the norm, being different. All these things, I feel it's not being inculcated or being supported in our education system. Even though the steps which are being made, it's only recent, and the feel of the parents they might say yes in paper, in theory, but deep down inside they know they want their kids to get the A's and get to the best school, to get the top jobs. Yes, they support these kids being different, not going the norm, but deep down inside they want their kids not to be that bunch that go out of the way. And when I have kids, I don't know how different I will be. Maybe I'm talking like this right now, I'm being all supportive of all these things I'm saying. But when I have kids, it's different. And I can understand where parents are coming from as well. But I think with this new generation which is going forward, these values which are inculcated in them will make them think differently when they are parents.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't achieve this thing during this generation. But the next generation, our current schooling generation, is who we should target, and we should target, and the rewards will come during the next generation when they have kids, and in about 2 generations time to come, what we mold now will be the results later. Yeah.
Would you say, the recent tragic incident in Mount Kinabalu, it has made a lot of teachers, principals, and even parents very wary of mountaineering in general, or doing risky activities, having the children. What's your view on that?
Definitely, because I'm actually leading a group of students, medical students, to Nepal to continue this work in the school next month actually. And everyone's biggest concern is safety. Everyone is telling us, okay, the earthquake happened in Nepal, what are you doing to take measures? People died in Kinabalu, what are you doing to take measures? 2 Malaysian Airlines flights were shot down, were crashed, and what are you going to do for that? So everything is like a knee-jerk reaction. It's a reaction to action. It's not a thought-through process. It's not like a deep-seated thing about whether this probability of this happening is frequent, not frequent, things like that. Rules are being made all the time according to what happens. Not there are definitely rules which have foresight and deep thought into them, but I feel that too many rules are being made. It kind of like hinders people to go forward and do things that they used to do.
But I'm quite impressed that the Ministry of Education took a stand.
Yep.
And they said we're not going to discontinue it.
I totally agree.
Right, which is great.
I think it's great as well.
Yeah.
But the fact that how many ministries, how many people out there, how many big organizations, leads in organizations are willing to make such a stand, that's a different question. Ministry of Health did the right thing by doing something like this.
Yep, yep.
But you'll find that many people in Singapore in leadership positions might not make a stand like that.
Yep.
They might be they might succumb to the public's views and how they will protect themselves, protect their institution, protect their children or the people under them,
Yep.
and will go with a milder stand. You see,
Yeah.
to make everyone happy.
So, Kumaran, to round up, can you give in one sentence a core message to youth today?
Wow, round up. Okay, I'll try.
From the heart.
I think passion should not give way to reality. It always can be incorporated, molded together in a way that's unique. If you do things that you are good at, you like to do, you eventually become good at what you're doing. And that you'll excel in it because you like doing it. And you'll be the top in that field because you're good at it. So, and we need more of this diversity, and everyone will be good at it. And that doesn't mean you have to give up what's reality and what your parents want, what is good for you, what will give you a rice bowl for your family. You can mold all these things together. You need a lot of thought, you need a lot of effort, you need to work hard at it. But if you do, you'll end up reaping many things at the same time, and at the end of the day, the satisfaction that you feel is beyond material things that you can earn or status that you can earn and all these things, because you know you're doing it for yourself.
For yourself.
For yourself.
Yeah. And so, Kumaran, what I like about you is that even as you summit, you're grounded. and I think that's a very important balance. Thank you very much for joining us. That was Kumaran Rasappan. Log into our website, www.iq.sg, to watch out for our next IQ hit list. Click the links to see other guests who have appeared on our previous episodes. Post your comments on social media and let us know if there's someone you would like us to interview on HitList.